Happy International Women's Day, everyone, and welcome to Feedonomics' first ever Women Empowerment Panel. Today, you'll have the opportunity to learn more about a few of our wonderful female leaders. You'll learn about their triumphs, challenges, and get some advice along the way. This is an open forum, so please feel free to ask any questions in the chat to make this more of a conversation, although I do have a few questions to start us off. I hope you all had a chance to read the panelists' individual journeys this weekend, but if not, don't worry. They will be sharing a quick synopsis about their background and experiences that led them to Feedonomics. So without further ado, Margaret, would you start us off with a little bit of background?
Sure. Yeah, so I put more details in my little blurb, but I grew up in upstate New York, so in the Finger Lakes area, and went to school actually for magazine journalism. So I've always been a passionate writer and was determined to be a journalist. I moved to New York City, and yeah, getting somebody to pay you to write is not always the easiest feat. And I actually ended up in a sales role at an advertising technology company. So I stuck with sales and tech. I really loved the business side of publishing and just the sales side of things in general. From there, I went to an education technology company where I got the chance to also contribute to the marketing side with my writing skills and started to produce some content. And that was very quickly clear, more my forte, more my jam. And it was super exciting to be able to participate there, and ended up transitioning completely over to marketing side of things from there, and went on to work at a couple different tech companies, another education technology company, as well as a data management company, and got the opportunity to move to San Diego, which is how I ended up on the West Coast for a non-tech company. And then I stayed there for a few years and was able to build a marketing department and team, which was amazing, and moved to LA with my husband not too long ago and ended up at Feedonomics.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. Love that your transition through all of that, so cool. And yeah, if you want to learn more information about all of them and haven't had a chance to read their little blurbs in the brochure, you can do so after, obviously. But Yasmin, would you share a little bit about yourself as well?
Of course. I'm Yasmin. I'm the Director of Product Operations here at Feedonomics. I started this wild ride in December of 2019, and I still haven't come up for air. I guess I grew up in West Virginia, a little strange for a child of immigrants, but I did. I grew up in West Virginia, and I had a somewhat traditional path into tech in that I majored in computer science, kicked off my career as a software engineer at Motorola, spent 2 years there on a small team that was responsible for making sure that the CDMA cellular StarTAC flip phones stayed in service no matter where you took them. And so that was awesome. I got to learn more in the first probably 3 months of that job than I did in 4 years of college. But I knew that with technology, with software development, I wanted to be more on the side of like, why are we building this? And so for me, that experience was really, really awesome, but then helped kind of catapult me onto more of a product sort of trajectory. So next I ended up going to starting at a small company called Grosvenor Capital Management. I was employee number 49 there. And at the time, the company was a small alternative investments firm with about 5 billion in assets under management. They were an established fund of funds, but in that they had been around for a long time, but they were about to kind of explode in terms of growth. They were just launching a software development team. And for me, the timing was perfect because I didn't want to be a developer anymore. I didn't want to code, but I really wanted to work in systems development. And so for me, I got to go in, block and tackle, and kind of figure out where I could make the most impact at that company. And I was there for about 14 years. And I kind of call it finding my fun. I like to wear many hats and do many things. And so I did things like managing our application support teams. I was a business analyst. I was a product manager. prior to that, I did some QA, some scripting, and then eventually I landed as a VP of product for all of our front office systems. And then I decided I was ready to leave. And so I went from a financial firm, mostly male company, to an all-female firm, which was very, very tiny, pretty early stage startup. I was employee number 7 there, and I managed, I was VP of technology. I managed product, data, all of their offshore engineering and IT for the company. And it was a really special environment. I'd never before I'd spent at that point 15 years of a career in technology. And so I'd never worked with only women. I'd mostly worked with only men. And so this was a really special and different environment and chance for me to like work with only women for some amount of time. And we did all sorts of fun things. We invented our own language. We lived a dream. We got into great trouble together. And we always had each other's backs along the way. But I really missed working with engineers. And so after moving my family to LA, I left Brightside to do some thinking about what was next for me. And a few months later, I ended up meeting Sean on a phone interview that I kind of happenstance had applied for this role. I was just starting to put out feelers for what was next. And the culture instantly resonated with me. And here I am.
Thank you so much. Love that. And I actually used Brideside for buying a bridesmaid dress. So I used that platform. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yesenia, would you like to share?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Yesenia Monroy. I'm the Director of Global Operations. And let's see here. If you read my bio, you will see that I started working at a very, very young age. And I had a family-owned business that was on a main street, street. And it was very interesting. I think for me, that's when the foundation, even though at the time I did not know that's when the foundation was being set for me in terms of working with large, diverse group of people, also helping people along the way in businesses grow, not only from a revenue perspective, but then also in building high-performing teams. So my dad, had very interesting ways of helping us grow, and he challenged us a lot, myself a lot. And I just knew very early on that I wanted to, like I mentioned, help people and get them where they wanted to be. So with that said, throughout, college, throughout my young years, I worked and I also went to school. So had an opportunity to kind of experience both sides, work life and then also school life. With that also came a lot of responsibility. I held a lot of, because I was able to carry on a lot of responsibility very early on, even though as a young adult, I was able to hold leadership positions that required a lot of responsibility, for me. So then after I graduated, I started working at 21st Century Insurance, and that was very fun. I like to call myself a builder. As I was looking and writing on my bio, I thought to myself, wow, definitely a builder in terms of operations teams and then also sales support teams. So 21st Century Insurance, I held a leadership position. I was able to launch the first bilingual English and Spanish customer care department. That was very exciting because it was something different that I had not done. Had the opportunity to launch that and break into the Latino market. And then from there, they decided to move all the operations to Texas. I did not think it was the right time for me to move to Texas. So I then transitioned on to a company called Intuit. And I just kind of organically was looking at it's a software company and it was in payments. So I transitioned there. It was a really, really great journey. I took a lot of learnings from there. Also was in a leadership role. And towards the tail end, I had the opportunity to help build their customer care level 1 and technical support in Tucson, Arizona. I was offered the opportunity to move there, but I am a California girl. So I was born and raised in California, although sometimes my accent, people are like, were you really? And sometimes I'm like, I don't know. But yes, I was born and raised in California. So I decided that it just wasn't the right time for me to move. Still wanted to stay close to my parents. So then from there, I ended up being recruited from Total Merchant Services, which is a payments company. And that's when I really experienced a lot of growth. There was, about 30 team members. We grew that company to about, 200 plus team members, wore many hats, built the customer care level 1, technical support, back office. And then also I transitioned over to sales. So when I transitioned over to sales as the director of partner relations, envision this, 3,000 partners, 1% female. So I had an opportunity to work very closely with, it was, a predominant male industry. I had an opportunity to work with a lot of great people. And I did the work. I built, and then at that point, there was an acquisition, and I was presented with an opportunity. I had been recruited for about 2 years to a company called Park Place Payments, which is a women-owned, women-led organization company, payments company. I was looking for my next challenge, my next opportunity. I wanted to build again. So I transitioned there, had the opportunity to build their sales operations teams. And then it was, during all that journey that I wanted to kind of pivot. I had moved from operations to sales. I had to take a step back and really look to see like what was going to make me happy. And I came across, Feedonomics, and I love the culture that was outlined, the 15 principles. And then I was able to, know that there's Stacy worked here and we had worked together before in the past. So I ended up transitioning to Feedonomics, and that's how I got here.
Thank you so much, Yesenia. And Stacy, last but certainly not least for this question, would you mind giving us a little tidbit of your background as well?
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here. We actually can't see or don't know how many people or who joined, but just the fact that you stopped and took time out of your day to recognize women in tech really means a great deal to each of us sitting in the room today. So thank you. I know everybody's running super hot and busy, and it really matters. I'm going to shorten mine because there's a lot of years. There's 20, 25 years of different things. So I think in summation, my path to Feedonomics was, I would call unconventional. I feel as if I ignored stereotypes. I was a competitive soccer player in my university and childhood years. And I think that sort of helped propel me in a man's technical world. I started with a for-profit online university. And from there, I thought it was just going to be a short-term thing in order to pay my first mortgage when I bought a house. And I ended up staying for 9 years in software as a service. I worked in web content management. I held 4 different roles there. And throughout that progression, I think I realized that there isn't one specific path. I was able to take on the next thing, or if we needed a trainer, I'd become a trainer, or and so forth. So I started inside sales there and ended up heading up our training and development department. And along the way, I helped with our CRM. We built it in-house and did a lot of testing and was able to really just gather a lot of information. So sales is really where I kicked it off. And then I felt as if I could continue that. So I was a senior regional director for a web content management company in Camarillo. From there, I was recruited by Intuit, and that's where Yesenia and I met. I was actually recruited into a consumer experience role and ended up staying there 5 years. So that was a pivot, but really in the 9 years I was previously in the company I was in, it just made sense to transition and scale the company. It wasn't so much about what industry or whether it was sales or operations. So I think when I stepped back, there's a lot of years after that. I worked for Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. I was head of sales at Beachbody. And I have then started focusing on startups and really scaling and building high performing teams, technical teams became my thing. I have software as a service and e-commerce throughout my entire career. I think the one thing that if I could share anything would be that I was really dedicated to continuous improvement, whether I knew it or not early in my career or whether I learned what that meant over time. I think that was the piece that really allowed me to be successful in a technical space, in a space that was very largely men driven. I've held leadership roles in every one of those opportunities, and I was oftentimes the only woman. I ultimately found Feedonomics, and it essentially took 20 years of experience and rolled it into one. As soon as I met the leadership team here, it was home. And I felt like they took all of those experiences, all the difficulties, all the challenges of being a female, growing your career in tech, and they just got it. And it was just a match made in heaven. I'm not saying that because Sean, you're probably on the call, but it really feels that way. I think it feels that way to all of us. We talk about it often. So that's it. I had a very unconventional sales, ops, customer support, training and development, operations path. And it was unusual, but I think it's just a matter of focusing your energy on continuously improving, and the rest is history.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. You all have had such different experiences in different industries, and I'm sure you've run into challenges being successful women. What were those challenges, and how did you overcome them to get to where you are now? And Margaret, if you could start us off, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, I think that there are just a lot of assumptions that come wrapped up in with being a woman that a lot of people don't even realize that they're making. And that can play out in different ways. I guess one story or example I can share is when I was in a sales role, my very first job in New York City, on a sales floor, mostly men, of course. And it was definitely an intense work environment. But I came on in a couple weeks after I joined, quickly after I got started. I was killing it. I was crushing my quota, closing a bunch of deals, just took to sales and was doing super well. And one day my manager, my boss, pulled me outside to speak with me. And with the best of intentions, I'm still friends with him now, but again, like sometimes you don't even realize you're doing this. He basically told me, look, a lot of the sales guys and sales managers are pretty convinced that I'm closing all of your deals for you, that I'm pretty much doing all of your work. And I was like, really? Well, is that because I'm new? Like, because I have no sales experience? Like, is it my, lack of background? And he said, no. He was like, well, I'm like, then why do they think that? And he said, well, just, look at you. Like, you're a young, attractive, social and outgoing, which also means, flirty, another assumption that comes from being a woman. You're flirtatious and social, and people don't buy the fact that you're able to do that yourself. And so they think I'm doing it for you. And so I just kind of looked at him and was like, well, how am I supposed to address that? What am I supposed to do? And his advice, which he quickly retracted, but was like, maybe you should just be a little less you. Like, I'll never forget those words being said to me. And, of course, it puts that pit of fire in your belly. And I was just like, look, do you know I'm closing all of my own deals? And he said, yes. I said, is your boss know I close all my own deals? And he said, yes. And I was like, okay, well, then this is something that I'm just going to keep at it. And like, they can assume all they want. And it's a lot of the challenges that come with being a woman in tech or just in the workplace is fighting through those assumptions, not allowing them to label you or put you in any sort of position or any type of way. And yeah, it plays out in lots of different ways. Like I know for women, even, you know, men are more likely to go out and demand that next raise or next promotion than women are. Like they're more expecting to be recognized and asked to do that. Men are also more likely to get that raise or promotion and then prove themselves. With women, it's often flip-flopped where, you know, they have to prove that they've mastered something before they're even considered for that next role or that next raise. So I think, you know, fighting through those assumptions and advocating for yourself is a way to try to overcome them, but it can definitely be difficult when you're kind of surrounded in those assumptions.
Wow. Wow. It's shocking that you had to deal with that and that someone said to your face, like, be less you. But, you know, I'm sure there are other stories like this on this panel today of challenges that you had to face with being a successful woman. What were those and how did you overcome them? Yasmin, why don't we go to you?
Yeah, I have stories just like Margaret, very similar stories, being, I mean, some even more absurd where, you know, like I caught wind of somebody calling me like my boss's handmaiden. And I mean, it's just absolutely infuriating when you work so hard. I've always had a very, very strong work ethic, and I've worked my butt off for many, many years. And I've always looked young also. And so like, I'm 43. And if I dyed my hair, you know, or wore my hat, you probably wouldn't know that. And that hasn't really served me very well in my career, to be perfectly honest. You know, now that people think I'm older, they treat me a little bit better about it. But I've always had a very strong work ethic, worked my butt off for years, through my 20s, through my 30s. And, you know, I worked absurd hours, did whatever was needed. I was a thought leader, a blocker tackler, a team leader. I was promoted over and over again. I was a manager. I had new and different roles. I took on additional, you know, teams and additional verticals, and I reached the goals that were set before me because, you know, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Sports is one of them. I played sports early, and I think that taught me to just go for it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yesenia, if you could please give us a little bit of, you know, what challenges you've sort of faced and how you overcame them.
Sure. So I have a lot of different stories, but I'm going to share just one where you know, payments industry, predominantly male. I was, you know, the director of partner relations. So I was in charge of pretty much managing all residuals. So what that means is payments to our partners. And sometimes when they engaged in unusual business practices, we had to hold those monthly residuals. And we're talking about anywhere from 40,000 to 100,000 monthly that they would receive. So we had a gentleman that we had to hold his residuals. So he flew from Florida, and I did not know that he was coming. So the reception said, there's someone here. They're looking for the director of partner relations. Okay, what's his name? Gave me the information, pulled it up. They brought him to my office. And when he walked in, he said, oh, I'm looking for the director of partner relations. Yes, that's me. Oh, well, you are young and you're a girl. Yes, I am. How can I help you? Let's talk about your residuals. And so, you know, some of the challenges that I faced as a young, you know, female and Latina is that there's a lot of stereotypes and biases. Not only, you know, internally, some folks thought, well, she doesn't have 30 years experience. So the way that I overcame that and those challenges is through my work. High productivity. I have really, really great work ethic, quality of work. And it was through time and showing and demonstrating consistency is how I overcame those challenges, the stereotypes, the biases of oh, she must be doing something, or what I was doing the work. So that's, I was very fortunate that I did surround myself with a lot of great, peers and leadership team that was able to see that. But for the folks that questioned that, the way that I overcame it was by my doing the work and the quality of work.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, work ethic is everything. And we're so lucky to be in an environment where that is championed. And then last but not least again, Stace, would you please share with us?
Yeah, I have many stories like that too, but I think we've covered the example really well. And I'm sorry for those instances that my peers have had those types of experiences. But so I'll go in another direction that I think has been really challenging for women in tech, which is the gender pay gap disparity. I have consistently worked with that same work ethic. Was super young when I took my first leadership position, and I have been in leadership ever since I was in my young mid-20s. And every time I was challenged by the same things as far as pay. And believe it or not, people do talk about their pay. And somebody that might have been transitioning from a role or to a role, or somebody in human resources, there's always information coming out, and it became very, very clear very early that that there was a disparity there. And so, head down, focused on do the work. I think for me personally, I had that competitive spirit. So for me, it was, I'm going to be successful in tech, regardless of whether or not I'm a woman. And I know to this day, I've held many leadership positions where I was a successor to someone that was male, and they made more money than I, and I may have taken on additional roles, more parts of the business, had a greater impact, more change, whatever it might have been during those times. And there still remains that disparity. So that's probably been one of the greater challenges, is continuing to do the work, not getting frustrated, really finding your authenticity and being you. Bring to the table what you have. You don't have to be the mathematician someone else is, or build the feeds like someone else, or code like someone else, but you have to be you. So I think that's probably, even as it relates to pay and roles and leadership, is to continue to focus on being the best you can be, bring that to the business, regardless if you're male or female. And work for companies that value both genders.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of tech, Yasmin, what made you want to be in tech? Because it seems like you were the only one that sort of had that path, that you wanted to be in tech. And then what advice would you give to women just trying to break into those technology fields?
Yeah, so for me, I think, I mean, my parents will probably say this, but like everybody kind of knew, everyone around me, as I was a toddler, as I was a child, knew that I was trying to figure things out. And so like my parents would take me to, growing up in West Virginia, we would either drive down to Disney, I think it's Disney World, and the Disney in Florida, or we'd go to Kings Island and we'd be riding these rides. And my mother would say that she would have a hard time keeping me like in the car, like in the little ride cars, because I would always be trying to like look over the side to try to figure out like, what are these gears? What are they doing? How does it go, and why? And it was more interesting to me than just like screaming my head off in joy. And so it was kind of obvious to my parents, and my parents were, I guess, a couple of nerds, which was awesome. I always loved taking things apart, putting them back together. I played with a lot of Legos, toys, that were about building and puzzling. And I really just, I guess I established that I really enjoyed like understanding a challenge and then finding solutions and just doing it over and over and over again, getting better at it, getting faster, doing it in slightly different ways. It was always an opportunity to learn something for me. And then I was really lucky because I had two incredible built-in mentors in my parents. My mother was a Turkish national tennis champion in the 1960s. And if you can kind of imagine like Turkey in the 1960s, we're talking about Turkey, which is a predominantly Muslim country. And the way that women were viewed in a country like that at the time, especially. My mother was a national champion as a teenager, an adult national champion as a teenager for many, many years. And she learned how to play tennis because her dad learned it from reading a book. So it was pretty remarkable what she was able to achieve. But she and my dad came to the US with only 2 suitcases, 2 tennis rackets, and had no English at all. And she went on to study computer science on a tennis scholarship, and then later worked as a computer programmer. So she was like my first blueprint for success, which is awesome. My dad, my father is an architect, and so he was also a builder and an engineer, and he worked out of our home. So he had his own, one-person show. And so I didn't exactly realize it at the time, but I was definitely influenced by both of them. And they gave me, on one of these trips down to Florida or Myrtle Beach or whatever it is on the East Coast, you go into these t-shirt shops, and my parents bought me a t-shirt when I was probably 5 or 6 that said, and you could like put words on it, and you could like, pay by the letter or whatever it was, and they'd iron on the letters. And they bought me a shirt that said, anything boys can do, girls can do better. And that just stuck with me. I've never and that, I think, also being a competitive person, it made me just always want to do better, better, and reject all stereotypes that I could. And so that was a little bit of like my background. And then my parents, being immigrants, insisted that I have a very concrete direction when I went to college. So I selected only one of only 3 acceptable career paths for a Turkish kid, which the 3 options were doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And at the time I picked doctor. And so my parents were happy. I was pre-med for a year, and then I switched to psychology, which horrified them. But I was really into psychology, and I thought, like, there's got to be some way to kind of peel back. Like, again, I really was into the why, and but so somehow I ended up in a course that was just how to use Microsoft Office as an elective, and the TA in my class was also the TA in a Turbo Pascal programming course. And I didn't really, even though my mother was a systems analyst, I only knew that she was responsible for getting up in the middle of the night and going and fixing things when they broke. I didn't really understand what she was doing. So I took that Turbo Pascal course and made my first game, and it was really exciting to me. So I switched my major to computer science, and I did not look back. And I guess for me, I was just hooked on this like prospect of being able to like understand a need, solve for it, and create, like, all at the same time. And so from there, I went into software engineering.
Amazing.
And then you asked, let's see, what advice would I give women trying to break into technology fields? There's a lot. There's like, make like a sponge, learn everything you can. Take courses on the side, participate in problem solving sessions, do hackathons, go to meetups, talk with a lot of people, reach out to people on LinkedIn, like especially if you're a woman that's trying to get into technology, reach out to other women, because we know that there's a ton of work to be done here. And in order to do it, we have to help each other. And so reach out to and find mentors, and don't just find female mentors. My best mentor was actually a man at my job at Grosvenor. He was our CTO by the time I left, and he's by far the best female champion, male boss of bosses that I ever had. I would say, just recognize that there are a lot of different perspectives, different ways to solve a problem, and then be prepared to bat away any sort of inappropriate or unfair characterizations. you do have to ignore certain things. It's not right, it's not fair, but they're going to get in your way if you allow them to impact you or your self-esteem. Be persistent. Don't take no for an answer. You're going to get a lot of no's. Figure out how to get to yes. And I don't even like to say that, but figure out how to do it. And then try to turn every rejection into an opportunity to learn what you can do better next time to get to where you want to go.
Thank you so much. Great advice. I love it. Stace, I would love to ask you a question of what are some of the characteristics of a good leader, especially a woman leader who is in tech now?
Yeah, that's an important one, and it's been a real life and grow. I've continued to try to grow and stretch in this particular area. I would say if we're just talking about characteristics, I think integrity has been the number one thing. I also like to say that I don't think that I always brought everybody along with me when I was younger. And I think that's sometimes a natural thing when you're used to being competitive and you're used to, getting out somewhere, whether it's a sport or you're good at puzzles or whatever your thing is, or art, whatever it is. And early in my career, I was really accelerating, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. I was meant for business. Like, this is fantastic. And there was a critical point in my career where I realized you have to bring everybody along with you, and I think that's an important one. Second to that would be integrity, the ability to delegate. People don't think so. You think if you do it all, then you're somehow the most fantastic leader. And I think it's the opposite. It's somebody that can take in all the inputs and sort of guide a lot of smarter than you people to get us to where we're trying to go, but do that in a way that's thoughtful and allowing other people to succeed and do the things that they're great at. I think that's important in leadership. Communication, high EQ are critical, regardless of what industry you're in. One for me is that I've always been very grateful. And I think that's really helped in some of the leadership positions that I've held. Grateful for the people that I work with, grateful for the opportunity to coach, grateful for making change, fixing something, doing something, improving something, and seeing it flourish. And then there's other things, like I kind of mentioned earlier, being dedicated to continuous improvement. I think that's a very important, leadership quality. Know where you're going, know where you're headed, have intention in leading, and just remember that, everyone makes up this organization in every role that we play. And being in leadership doesn't mean you just get, it means you actually give way more than you get. And that's important to know. I think people think if I get to leadership, it's sort of a me, and it's the opposite. It's what can I do for the people around me, and how can I help us get success, to a place where we're successful, and no eyes, it's just it's a we thing. So I think those are important characteristics.
Thank you so much. Panel, I'm skipping around a little bit, so don't be alarmed. But I would love to ask all of you, how can we do a better job to promote female leadership in today's society? And I would love for Margaret to start us off.
I think the biggest thing would be, it all comes down to respect at the end of the day, I think, and trust, where I don't know where the barriers exactly lie in different situations where those are not as held as true for women. And I think being aware of those and identifying those as they arise and working to fix them as a group, it takes both women and men and a team effort everywhere to help make that happen. But when we can get to that point where it's, a mutual respect, trust always, and then we can just call it people empowerment. It doesn't have to be women empowerment. But there are lots of hurdles and lots of ways that, the things that we have to overcome just to get to that level playing field and perception even. So I think that identifying those those different things, whether it's how you interact with people in a meeting. Like I know one common thing that I've heard across industries or roles for women is, you know, being talked over in meetings, being cut off, being interrupted, feeling like you have to speak extra loud just to be heard, or not feeling, you know, like you're being asked for your input or but your input is being welcomed. That's a small thing that I think happens all the time that people really aren't aware of, and it doesn't come from a malintent. It's just lack of awareness and understanding. That's one great example I can think of. I'm sure you all can also think of a million more. Yeah. But we got to call it out to both ourselves and, you know, in a nice way to each other to help start changing that.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Stace, would you like to share a little bit?
Same question?
Yeah. Oh, I can repeat it. So sorry. Okay. How can we do a better job to promote female leaders in today's society?
I think invest in their training. Organizations that invest in women, that do panels of women in technology or in the workplace or in the organization, I think that's critical. I think mentoring is significant. I too have had, you know, I've learned something early on. It was actually from Intuit, is to surround yourself with a personal board of directors. And within that personal board of directors is, you know, your most intimate group can be your boss, can be, you know, network. It can be people just in your life that have a powerful effect on you. And some of my most impactful mentors have been men in the appropriate way. And I know there's been other, you know, scenarios with women in the workplace, and mine have been pretty favorable in that regard. And I've been very, very fortunate. I think that more promotions in leadership. So a true sign is to see more senior leaders, more executives that are women. Oftentimes you'll see that there's that ceiling to where you go to in leadership. And I think breaking those ceilings, I know it sounds cliche, but it's still true today. Breaking into senior leadership, executive leadership, and so forth. Organizations that look for women to do that, that consider the work, regardless of male, female. Feedonomics is one of them. Yeah, I think those are the things that promote female leadership.
Yesenia, how can we do a better job to promote female leadership in today's society?
Sure. So kind of similar sentiment as Stacy, but first of all, I think acknowledgement. We've made some progress, but there's still more work to do, especially in senior leadership and like C-level type of roles where there's still that gender gap. Also, you know, providing women the same opportunities as men have. I'm a very big advocate about making sure the person that is more qualified, you know, is selected for a specific position, but to give women the same opportunity to have those mentors. You know, if it's one mentor, equally divide your time to help, you know, both genders. So you know, acknowledgement and then also giving mentorship opportunity is what I think we can do.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. And then Yasmin, how can we do a better job to promote female leadership in today's society?
Yeah, this, okay. So a couple things, and two of them are our principles: know thyself and no egos. You all have already said this, but call out yourself, call out yourselves, call out your peers when they, and your colleagues, when they, of course, unintentionally make these characterizations that we know are not helping helping to promote women in you know, leadership or in work positions. I think a lot of this also starts, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but we have, like, there's so much work to do But if we also kind of examine the younger generations, like as I'm a parent, so as parents, what we're teaching our kids is really, really important, to offer them choices and not just offer them a blueprint that is like what they expect a traditional gender role to be. I think this is actually, I mean, it's already happening with most of our daughters, but I don't know if we're talking as much to our sons about the same problems, the same challenges, and the same needs. And I think that that's really important. I think what we teach our boys is as important, because we are literally all in this together. This is not something that women will be able to solve alone. It's something that we very much rely on our male allies to be able to like kind of lift each other up and make each other better. And it's the way we're gonna continue building, you know, kind of kick-ass technology here at Feedonomics.
I love that you brought the principles into it. That makes me, as a people empowerment coordinator, very happy. But thank you so much, guys. I know that we are a little early, but does any of the attendees have any other questions for these wonderful leaders here? Oh, there's one from Colleen. What change do you see we as women need to take together to bring each other up in the tech world and break stigmas and stereotypes?
I mean, I think a lot of it is when we were first talking about the challenges in general of being women in tech, and just, you know, continuing to have confidence in yourself and your work, and continuing to work hard and stick to your guns, but also lifting each other up and advocating for each other, especially if you see somebody left out of the loop, or you see somebody being talked over, or you see somebody that's maybe being looked over for a promotion or that next step or a mentorship, whatever the case may be. You know, and that goes, as we've said, women and men should be doing that as well, but especially as women, we're more aware of those situations sometimes. And so advocating for each other and having each other's backs too, and continuing to just prove that those stereotypes and stigmas are just those stereotypes and stigmas.
Yeah, I think it's okay too to share what you are good at in tech. I mean, men so easily speak about the things that they are competent at, and it's okay for women to do that too. And equally, I love my super smart men friends, and I love the fact that, you know, women at Feedonomics can also be equally as bright and contribute. And, you know, it's okay to say you're good at something. I think that's a piece that we should empower each other to speak up and encourage each other to take that first step and put ourselves out there, and say we're good enough for something.
It's a great point, Stace. I feel like that's something women are very hesitant to do.
Yeah, it's kind of ingrained in us since we're little, which is another panel for another day. But I mean, we're raised differently. It's scientifically proven that we're raised differently. And I think it's changing, and I think we can change it within our own homes. And yes, I have a daughter and a son, and I like to think that I raise them both to see both sides of things. And it's not women, male, it's who has the core competency, who has the motivation, who's doing the work when nobody's looking, who believes in themselves, who's got integrity. Like, those are the things. And I don't look at their gender and say, okay, I'm going to share with my son Ty, this is where you're going to end up. And yes, you're going to go to STEM for university, and, you know, and then my daughter, and say, and this is what you can do. It's wide open, right? So I think that ties back into Yasmin's comment, and I think it was a very wise one. You know, it's equality. It's not now one being hyper focused as women. It's us all coming together as an organization and elevating, regardless of gender, in tech.
Absolutely. I think it's important to call out that women empowerment should never be seen as a versus thing, or as much a rally cry. You know, it's an effort on all parties.
Absolutely. And Yasmin, you know, you bring up a good point, because that's something that I can say. I hold my dad very close to my heart. He liked to say he was very progressive, you know, very early on. anything that a man can do, you can do. Make sure that you, study, work, are self-sufficient, independent. And he made sure that he, talked to me about those things very early on, and has really helped me in my leadership roles.
Amazing, guys. Well, thank you so much for participating in this panel today. As you guys know, this is something that I have wanted to champion at many organizations that I've been at, and I was lucky enough to do it for this organization, Feedonomics, which is fantastic. And just your stories and your input and your advice is just amazing. I have no other words to say than thank you. And it just means so much, I think, to all the men and women who are here watching today. So thank you so much. Yeah. And I hope to do this again soon. But thank you.